We're going to go ahead and give our attendees another minute or two to log in to today's CLE presentation, and then we will go ahead and get started. So we appreciate the patience. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining today's CLE presentation, The Ethics and Strategy of HBOs Succession. If that doesn't ring a bell, you're probably not in the right Zoom meeting. A few housekeeping items before we begin. This presentation has been approved for 1 hour of ethics credit. Sherry Harris will provide the CLE number in the chat toward the end of today's presentation, so make sure to look out for that. Also, feel free to submit your questions through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to answer those at the end of today's presentation. I am pleased to introduce my colleague at Bell, Nunnally & Martin, Brent Turman. Brent is a commercial litigator whose practice covers a variety of industries and matters, from business disputes to real estate to intellectual property. And I'm very excited for Brent's presentation today because I'm a huge fan of Succession. Please keep in mind, if you haven't watched the show, there will be short clips shown today that may be spoilers. And for those of you who have watched the show, you'll find the clips have been significantly edited to omit obscene language, a hallmark of Succession. So with that, I'll let Brent take it away and enlighten us all about how Succession's main characters do, or more often do not, comply with ABA model rules for professional conduct. Thanks, Brent.
Thank you, Josh. And for those of you who have watched the show, you will see you will appreciate the amount of time I've spent trying to find clips we can use that do not use foul language, because if you've seen it, you know what's going on. So give me 1 second real quick so I can get this screen shared. And we will get started. Okay. There we go. So thank you for the introduction, Josh. My name is Brent Turman. If any of you were watching, it was probably 2 years ago now, you might have seen me give a virtual presentation for DIYL called What Kanye West Can Teach Us About Litigation. Again, I'm trying to find fun ways to get CLE credit, and in this case, ethics. But yes, I'm a partner at Bell, Nunnally & Martin in the trial, civil litigation section. I also practice entertainment law, so a little more about me. Today, we're going to talk about HBO's smash hit show, Succession. If you've seen it, you're probably already up to speed, you know what's going on. If not, don't worry, I will tell you enough early on to where you are caught up to speed enough to be able to follow along. We're going to have fun and talk about some specific storylines in this show. So for those of you who haven't watched it, not all of the main characters in the show are attorneys, but we are all going to suspend our disbelief because we want to make sure we get our ethics credit, right? So we're going to say, if these people did these acts and they were attorneys, would they have violated the ABA model rules? And spoiler alert, almost always. It's going to be yes. We're going to explore their actions and decisions and kind of synthesize those with the rules. So if you haven't seen it, this is a show about power, family, politics, and very importantly, money. It has a unique tone. It's maybe part dark comedy, part Shakespearean, part soap opera or hyperdrama. This show is also a commentary about the uber wealthy. I'm talking about like the top 1% of the top 1%. And the show follows a fictional media company conglomerate called Waystar Royco. It spans 4 continents. They have entertainment, news, and resorts. This company was started by and is still run by the patriarch, the man in the middle, Logan Roy. 3 of his children throughout the series to this point are jockeying for positions, seeing who is going to be the one to be the successor and take over the company. And they were raised to think that this is on the pedestal, right? This is what I want to do. This is my goal in life, is to take over, follow in my dad's footsteps. This is a show, again, about strategy, tension, backdoor meetings, backstabbing, maneuvering. It's ugly. So before we get into the clips, I have to make my legal disclaimer. I don't own the IP. I don't claim to. I'm showing these snippets today so we can learn about ethics, have an educational session, and also I want to encourage you to go out and watch more if you like what you see. Obviously, any IP attorneys know exactly what I'm doing there. So with this, I know we're in a virtual presentation. I know everyone is billing on something else right now. I've been there, but I was gonna say, we have a lot of video clips today. I wanna make sure, if you got 2 screens, make sure this is up on one. If you are working on a Word document, make sure you move it over a little bit so you can see these clips because we're gonna have fun today. First clip I'm gonna show you is to prove 1 point. If you've seen this, you know. All of the characters on the show are objectively, just get out in front of it, they are.
Okay, so you need to put that in the locker, man, and don't tell anyone. And pray that you can trust me because you just handed me a valuable piece of capital. Greg, buddy, trust no one, ever. Okay, wise words.
Trust no one, not your boss, not someone who works for you, not. So let's see who these main characters are. First, let's go to Logan Roy. He is played by Brian Cox, and a little trivia about me. The first time I ever saw Brian Cox in a movie was in the cinematic masterpiece, Tommy Boy, featuring the late Chris Farley and David Spade. A little more serious role in this show. He plays the family patriarch who is a self-made man from Dundee, Scotland. And he is driven by primarily 2 things, profit and power. Those are his guiding forces. That's his motivation. His kids think the only way to get his love is to play the game the way that he plays the game. And he doesn't show affection in a way that a lot of kids wish their father would. There's a few fleeting moments where he's proud of his kids, but he's a gruff old man. A lot of people don't like him. For example, here's what his brother had to say about him.
He's morally bankrupt. He's a nothing man who may well be more personally responsible for the death of this planet than any other single human being.
So we're not hiding how we feel, right? That's how he feels about him. That's how a lot of people in the public do. So let's go back. We have the patriarch, and let's go now to the golden child. This is Kendall Roy. At the very beginning of episode 1, you see a magazine where Forbes, it's not the best nickname, but they call him the heir with flair. Everyone on the street, everyone on Wall Street knows he's going to be taking over for his dad when this season starts. And so he's played by Jeremy Strong, who is a really interesting method actor. For example, Jeremy Strong would not be around the character who plays Logan Roy anywhere on set unless they were filming. Because he said, this is a man I love with all my heart and I hate with all my heart. I don't want to spend time with him. Another example of his method acting. There's a car crash in one scene, in one episode, and it crashes off a bridge into a river in the middle of the night. It's super cold. Before every take of something that happened post-crash in that scene, he made a PA dump a bucket of cold water on him. So he wants to feel the pain. And poor Jeremy Strong, if you want to feel the pain, this is a tough character because the writers put a lot of obstacles in front of him. And he puts a lot of the obstacles in front of himself through this. Early on, away from the method acting, early on, Kendall's supposed to be in charge, but everyone knows that Logan is really pulling the strings.
Do we need to sweeten the offer? You want to bump the offer another point? Do you want to call your dad?
Do I want to call my dad? No, I don't want to call my dad. Do you want to call your dad?
No.
No? Do you want to call your dad? Does anybody want to call their dad?
Anybody out there want to call their dad? I love that scene. And so with this, Kendall's trying to find the shape of this deal where they're acquiring this cutting edge technology and social media, things like that. But he has some snags, runs into some issues. He's on about the 5-yard line, so close to getting this deal done. And he decides to leave the office, leave the negotiations for a lunch. Not just any lunch. This is a lunch celebrating his father's 70th birthday. His father, Logan, sees this and is like, what the heck are you doing? The deal is more important than anything. Family always comes second. He doesn't say that. He says it with his actions. And he sees this as a knock on Kendall. He's too soft. He's, quote, not a killer, right? And he sees this as a knock on him. And while the plan was for Kendall to take over, that plan changes in season 1, episode 1.
Also, I already mentioned to Kendall, despite the chatter and all things considered, I'm going to give it a couple of years.
As in?
I'll stay in situ as chairman, CEO, head of the firm.
Dad, you what?
I just said, son, or we're not listening as usual.
But you're not, what?
It's no big deal. I'm staying on. We can discuss the details.
You didn't tell me.
We can announce you.
And this is important here. There's more conversation. But this is important because it's going to tie into an ethical rule really fast. Logan makes this decision. Hours later, he terminates a longtime C-level executive and makes a bunch of different moves, shaking up the corporate structure and the leadership of the company. That same day, he sustains an aneurysm and is in a coma. So again, man, depending on what side you're on, you got some motivation to say whether Logan did or did not have legal capacity. Kendall, I think we know why, is arguing, look, he didn't know what he was saying. He was saying words, but that's just complicated airflow, right? He didn't know what he was saying. And that gets us to some of these model rules. ABA Rule 1.14 talks about what we should do when we have a client who has diminished capacity. Subsection A says when a client's capacity to make adequately considered decisions in connection with representation is diminished, as far as reasonably possible, you want to maintain the client-lawyer relationship with the client. Not always possible. The rules talk about some things you can do when it's not possible. And very importantly for this particular instance, you can think about how the stock price of Waystar Royco would be dramatically affected if the public knows about Logan's medical condition. So ABA Rule 1.14, comment 8 says disclosure of the client's diminished capacity could adversely affect the client's interests. For those reasons and others, information relating to the representation, like your client's legal capacity, is protected by Rule 1.6, which we'll talk about that rule some more later. Also, ABA Rule 1.16 addresses situations where a lawyer's physical or mental condition mentally impairs his or her ability to represent the client. Now, luckily, when you're in full service, larger or medium-sized firm like ours, these are real issues that affect real people, right? And we have lots of other attorneys to be able to help. That could be a big issue. You can imagine if you're in a small firm or even a solo practice, that could be a big issue. So Rule 1.16 gives guidance there. So there's a lot of times where Logan tries to grab power back, but he has this internal struggle the whole time. And probably the key question for Kendall, which I don't think's been answered yet, is he going to become his father, or is he become a different person, perhaps a better person than his father? Let's go back to the family tree here and let's look at the younger brother right here, Roman Roy. He is the loudmouth, screw-up young brother. He has a lot of opinions and doesn't mind telling that. He's someone who fires first and then aims afterward, right? Early in season 1, I think this is the best way to describe him. Kendall calls him a walking lawsuit. He provides voluminous complaints about his harassing conduct, inappropriate communications, and things like that. Any of you who practice employment law may have seen some similar fact patterns from time to time. Now, while he doesn't always earn his spot at the adults table, you see him grow up during the series. And he tries hard, but doesn't always make the smartest choices. He also doesn't always do his homework. For example, here is a scene where he's looking at whether he should go and invest money in another company. And you'll see about that company right here.
Buy them with me. 50-50.
By them? Yeah, let me have a think. I mean, I don't really see a downside other than zero knowledge or interest in Scottish football, but yeah, let me have a little think. Hearts.
So basically, a dictator's son is trying to get Roman to invest in this football club. And obviously, Roman wants to be buddies with the dictator's son because there's a lot of money at play and a lot of money at the dictator's family's disposal. So with that, at least he admitted it, right? He knows he doesn't know what he's talking about. But Rule 1.1 talks about competence. And lawyers should provide competent representation to a client. That requires the legal knowledge, skill, thoroughness, and preparation reasonably necessary for the representation. And a couple of things there are great. I mean, you can study up and learn enough to give competent representation. Also, you can associate with another lawyer or another firm if they have competence in a particular area. And with that, there's another time, let's see this next clip right here, just kind of highlights his lack of competence in this area after he goes through with the deal.
Got all this, guys. Don't worry about it. Because you guys are a team. And when a team is a team, it can't actually physically be beaten. It's impossible. So go hard, go fast, go, you lovely bastards.
Pretty inspirational, right? And so with that, there's another moment late on where there's a DOJ investigation. And Logan's trying to figure out which one of his kids will step up and be I don't remember if it's CEO or president. And really, it's just a figurehead, right? They're just there for the moment because Logan can't be there because he's under heat from the DOJ. And this next clip I'm going to show you is really, it says more about Logan than Roman, but it's very interesting. And so when you're communicating with certain people and you sit there and just maybe have a pause in a conversation, they feel the awkwardness and they want to fill that void with something. And this is a terrific tool I love using in depositions. When you have these oversharers, they think if I sit there with a long, awkward pause, they might think, oh, I should explain it again because Brent obviously didn't understand me. Or maybe I didn't tell him this. This would help him understand it better. This is an amazing tactic. And also it's nice to kind of lean in forward as well. I think this works better in person than virtual. But what are you going to do for depositions? So here's a clip where Roman initially calls his dad to explain why he wants the role. And you'll see how well Logan uses this tool of just manufacturing empty spaces.
I just want to throw a couple of things in the old lobster pot.
Mm-hmm.
I think it should be me.
Okay.
It's my time. I can do it. I want it, and I think I can do it. So.
Okay.
But sorry, what?
No. You go.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think it should be me. But if you don't think I'm ready, okay, which I would understand. But and I'm not saying that I agree with that, but
It's painful, right? But it's amazing what Logan's doing. Remember, Roman called to do a sales pitch for him taking over, and then he goes further and undermines his own position here in this next clip.
1, 2, 3. Okay. Well, I'd love it, but I understand. But I do want it. Okay? But no hard feelings. So yeah, no, anyway, I'm just gabbling. So yeah, love you, Dad.
Uh-huh.
Bye.
Roman's out.
At one point in there, he talks about, even if you think I'm not ready, maybe someone who's more experienced needs to oversee me for a while and I can take over later. Again, he's arguing against his own position. And of course, you all know he has a very famous brother, the Macaulay Culkin, right? We all know who that is. So next, we go back to the family tree, and we have Logan's only daughter, at least as far as we know at this point. This is Siobhan Roy, and I think she's, they call her Shiv, which I think is a good, accurate name for her, good description. She's capable and headstrong, and she's the only outsider, ambitious child. What I mean by that is she is not in the family business when the show starts. She is a political consultant, and maybe in a fit of rebellion, it's on the other side of the aisle, the more liberal side of the aisle than her family. Of course, she gets drawn back to the possibility of taking over the company, and I think she's one of the most ruthless people in here, as we'll see in some clips here coming up. She also knows the power of information and withholding information from others. For backstory, in season 2, there's about to be a big news story coming out about a scandal from Waystar Royco's cruise line, and we're going to hear a lot more about that later today. And Shiv knows some very unsavory information regarding illegal activity is going to hit the media very soon. Now, at the time, Logan was considering either Shiv or another seasoned executive to take over the company. Shiv uses this non-public information to her advantage. So here's where she learns about the information.
Huge. It's going to blow us wide open. Sour any CEO announcement. The new face is going to get ripped to shreds.
Short-term question is, when do we tell him? Do we tell him tonight?
Anyone want to end the night with a round of war on the floor?
Big picture, I mean, the weasel is an existential threat.
Okay. Give him the night off.
Give him the night off. So what happens? Shiv knows stuff's about to hit the fan. She knows that her dad is considering either her or another woman, the woman we saw in the background there. And so what does Shiv do?
Dad, listen. You gotta do what you think is right. Yeah? That's all there is. And she's the one. For now, she's the one.
For now. So interesting decision, which definitely benefited Shiv and is going to hurt someone else. Roman, what do you think? Was that ethical or not?
Okay, well, it's the ethical code that, and I hate to say this, but she's behaved rather unethically here.
That's one time I agree with Roman. So we're talking about a couple rules here. ABA Model Rule 1.4. Again, Shiv is not an attorney, but if you are an attorney, what do you need to do? You need to keep your client informed. Specifically, keep them reasonably informed of the status of the matter. And the goal here, comment 5 says the goal is the client has sufficient information to participate intelligently in decisions concerning the objectives of the representation and the means by which they're pursued as well. And also, this is common sense, guys, but hey, let's get our ethics credit. Comment 7 says a lawyer may not withhold information to serve the lawyer's own convenience or interest. Rule 1.3 talks about diligence. And here, comment 3, this is, it's interesting they decided to put this in the rule, and I agree with it. I'm gonna read some excerpts from comment 3 for rule 1.3. Perhaps no professional shortcoming is more widely resented than procrastination. A client's interests often can be adversely affected by the passage of time. And even when the client's interests are not affected in substance, an unreasonable delay can cause a client needless anxiety and undermine confidence in the lawyer's trustworthiness. I think that's a good reminder. I think it's great if we can keep clients informed, even if things are not important at the time and there's nothing urgent to be decided. A little constant communication can definitely ease your clients' minds. Next, let's go back to the family tree, and I'm going to show you someone else who's not a Roy by blood, but let's look at Tom Wamsgans. This is Shiv's significant other early in the show, and he feels inferior compared to the Roys, and they kind of make it clear that they agree with him. He wants to be close to the family. He wants to be close to the power, and I love this scene where they're talking about how they're going to change last names after the wedding.
Did you think again about whether we want to go Wamsgans or Roy Wamsgans? Or, as I said, I'd be willing to just drop traditional and go Tom Roy, in fact, for myself.
That's probably the only way that Tom is progressive. It's very interesting, right? But anyway, Shiv just walks over this guy, throws him under the bus. And as far as she's concerned, she owes no duty of loyalty to him. For example, in late season 3, they're looking at, as a company, Logan is trying to decide, look, I've got to fire somebody. I've got to have someone's a scapegoat to point to kind of appease the DOJ. So maybe they won't come after me. And let's look at this conversation when Tom's name comes up as someone who should be terminated and reprimanded.
I'm saying this, but I don't believe it. I'm saying it because this is the time we're all saying things.
Yeah, I think Tom works. There's kind of a clarity, I think.
Yeah.
You know.
Does anyone care to speak to my qualities?
No, Tom looks logical.
What?
Cruises, document destruction.
What?
I'm not saying that it should be. I mean, I'm saying you're like family, which is good, but also not.
Wow. So as lawyers, we owe fiduciary duties to our clients. Shiv doesn't think she owes that to Tom at all. And we're going to learn a lot more about Tom and his working relationship with someone else that's very important to him later today. Next, let's go to the forgotten child. How do I know he's forgotten? Because I thought it was more important to talk about Tom Wamsgans before him. This is played by Alan Ruck. This is, again, the forgotten child. And interestingly, Alan Ruck here is only 10 years younger than Brian Cox in real life, but he plays his son in the show. It says Connor Roy, and he's an afterthought in this show. And he's out there, guys. He lives on a ranch in the Southwest. Nothing wrong with that, but these things add up. He talks about things the other Roys think are crazy. And despite his lack of credentials, he thinks he's ready to be the president of the United States as a Republican candidate. So in the next clip, we see him meeting a politician from the other side.
Revis, Connor Roy, huge skeptic, massive skeptic.
Good to know.
Yeah, socialism. Wow, I got a big problem with you and everything you stand for, my friend. Hi, baby.
Hey.
Now, I look at you and I see Weimar, I see hyperinflation. I mean, I look at your face and, no offense, but I see dead babies.
Well,
You know what I mean?
that's very interesting. I can't say I agree, but look, would you excuse me for a minute?
Wow, what do you do with that? So interestingly, that's at Shiv's wedding, and that man that Khan is speaking to is one of her clients, who is a Democratic candidate for president. So next, Connor, we talk about how he met his significant other. Her name is Willow, and the way to delicately say it on a recorded program such as this is that when they met, he paid for her company.
Revis.
So, how'd you two meet?
Online.
Online.
Believe it or not, this is going to tie into an ethical rule in a second. And with this, Willow wants to be a playwright. And as part of their transactional relationship, Connor funds her play in New York in exchange for her agreement to be in a relationship with him. They finally put on the play in New York, and things do not go so well, as extensively noted in the public reviews.
Come on, how are they?
A mixture.
Okay, well, read me one. Read me one good one.
Okay.
Well, what did the Times say?
Oh, baby, you know what? I think let's just have a good time, and then, you know, when we're ready
Come on,
for a laugh.
let me take a look.
You know, why don't we just...
give me... Think. Just stop. Where is it?
No, here. Just ignore the headline, okay? Disregard that, because...
So with that, a lot of times Connor's trying to be nice, but as attorneys, we can still be nice. Like, we can spin things, but we need to have a duty of candor. We have a duty. We need to abide by that duty. Rule 3.3 talks about a candor to the tribunal, and a lawyer shall not knowingly make a false statement of fact or law to a tribunal, or fail to correct a false statement of material fact or law previously made to the tribunal by the lawyer. Again, these things are common sense. We all know them inherently, even if we don't know the rule citation, but let's make sure we get our ethics credit, right? So next is not necessarily an ethics issue, but these two clips I love because let's talk about client management. Sometimes we have very emotional clients. I know I've dealt with these in the past. And Connor acts like one of those clients in the next clip. This is at a charity ball. And man, Connor is going to lose it because the butter at these fancy dinners, the butter is way too cold.
Dinner rolls ripping out there as we speak.
Connor!
I am a laughing stock.
There are always issues when you serve this many people, but I think, on the whole, it's going very well.
Complacent. You're fired. You're all fired. Idiots.
And so with that, of course, there's going to be minor issues and speed bumps along the way, and then everything goes beautifully the rest of the evening. And let's look at how Connor as a client is shortly after the event.
Hey, you guys. You won't believe what people are saying out there. It's amazing. We tore it up. We nailed it, man. Score team record. You're awesome, dude. You're awesome. I love you so much. Everyone, you're amazing, and I love you so
And
much.
sometimes, like the attorney, you're like, are you
Bring
kidding
it. Come
me?
on, come
Like,
on.
This is just 180. I told you, trust me, we're going to figure this out. It's going to be all right. So with this, let's go back to the family. We have a little more distant family, and this is my favorite character here. This is cousin Greg, played by Nicholas Braun. He is, in my opinion, a great source of comedic relief, but also I don't think I'd want to see him as the main character, right? It wouldn't work. It'd be like Joey's spinoff from Friends. He's good in moderation, but he's a fish out of water. And here's a little clip just kind of demonstrating how he's a fish out of water.
No, it's
And with this, he's hungry, and he finds a very unique way to transport some food from the cafeteria at the office for his use later.
No, it's free, right? Is that cool? I mean, I don't want to be melodramatic, but
My body is growing weak due to a lack of sustenance.
But in a dog poop baggie?
Yeah, I have a bunch of them from back
Greg,
home.
that's disgusting.
Not really. It's like, it's not like they pre-poop them or something. Like, it's not like, they're just bags, really. It's just a mental barrier.
And so with this, we'll talk a lot more about the ethics of Cousin Greg later today. As a side note, I love one thing I listened to a podcast interview and I learned what he did to practice for this role. For example, he talked about he'd go to an airport when he's going to fly somewhere. He'd get there way ahead of time. He'd walk up to strangers and try to figure out two things. First, how long he could hold a conversation with them. And second, how personal these strangers would let the conversation get to. So next, we're off the family tree now, but this is a very important character for purposes of today. This is Jerry. She is the in-house counsel for Waystar Royco. She is smart and extremely skilled at climbing the ladder and playing the game. She also knows how to use her influence. And on top of that, she's been within the inner circle for decades, and she knows where the bodies are buried. She knows what skeletons are in the closet. Now, given her role as general counsel, it's interesting to look at the circumstances that she, goes through in the first 3 seasons so far. And it gives us another opportunity to talk more about ethics.
I love your dad. Personally, I will always be there for him. He's a great man.
Yeah, well, here.
I work for Waystar, not Logan Roy. Are you thinking of moving against him? Because if you are, I've spoken to Frank, and I've seen all I need to see.
With that, let's look at Rule 1.13. Talks about when the organization is a client. This is very interesting, especially if any of you represent newer, less legally sophisticated business owners. This is something you need to address. Rule 1.13, there's a subheading there that talks about clarifying the lawyer's role. And there's times in companies when people within a company do bad things, or at least it's alleged they did bad things, that an individual, such as an executive's interests may become adverse to the company's. So it's important for the lawyer to advise the constituent in those situations that the lawyer can't represent them, that the lawyer represents the entity. And this is something, obviously, you'd like to have this be clear before there's a conflict, right? You want to make sure early in these communications, you make it clear you represent the organization, not president or CEO or whoever. Next, it's important in those situations where there could be something adverse, the discussions between the lawyer for the organization and the individual who's an executive within the organization or an employee may not be privileged. We got some more clips here to look at.
I mean, obviously it's an ethical minefield.
And with that, there's a situation where we're talking about that dictator earlier, and they want to use money from a dictator to fund propaganda networks overseas, but through American companies. And this dictator has been deemed a terrorist by several organizations. This is a big deal, right? So that's very specific, but I did this to pull back to a bigger role. Rule 2.1 talks about the duty to inquire. Now, in rendering advice, a lawyer can look at lots of considerations there. You can think about how the blowback could be from this as far as just the court of public opinion, right? Not even looking at legalities. So with that, you can have other considerations such as moral, economic, social, and political factors that may be relevant to the client's situation. Again, we talk about, sugarcoat. I'm trying to find a way to say it because you'll see what I mean. Sometimes you want to sugarcoat a message to your client, but you still need to be upfront and tell them enough, right? But you're not gonna, you know how to communicate, right? So with this, in presenting advice, comment 1 says a lawyer endeavors to sustain the client's morale and may put advice in as acceptable a form as honesty permits. Again, you have to have honesty, but you don't need to be blunt, right? You're in a bad position because this, and this. Think about how you communicate to your clients, but keep them informed and be honest. So next, 3 siblings are trying to overtake Logan Roy. And when it doesn't work, Roman comes to Jerry for help. And again, we'll see here, Jerry says the right things to abide by these rules, but you can see how her motivation in different times guides her to make different decisions.
Jerry. He's not well. You can help us, right? You can help us stop him.
Well, I'm focused on whatever outcome best serves the financial interests of the shareholders.
So again, she says the right things. Let's make sure as attorneys, we say the right things and do the right things. So Kendall through here, he has several attempts to take over the company. And one of them is putting together a bear hug letter and barreling toward a hostile takeover. And with this, he has conversations with someone he trusts, and he learns a valuable lesson from this.
What do they think of me?
How do you mean? What's the context?
Can't give you context.
Okay, that's very interesting context.
Look, as a pal, say there was a situation where private equity was trying to buy out a major media company and install a new CEO, how would they view me?
Serious?
Are you serious? I have to cut there because there's a lot of dirty words coming up after that. And so he has this conversation with Frank, with whom he trusts. And then he learns a valuable lesson. And that lesson is loose lips sink ships.
But you told Frank Vernon.
I hinted.
We've been contacted by a reporter, and they know something's cooking. We have to go tomorrow or risk a leak, which kills us.
No.
So there, confidentiality. We know this, but we're going to get our ethics credit. Rule 1.6 talks about confidentiality, and a lawyer shall not reveal information relating to the representation of a client unless the client gives informed consent. For example, when our firm puts out promotional materials or marketing materials and it involves a client, like, you want to make sure you get approval before you do things like that. And that's not the only example, you know what I mean? Comment 2 talks about, it sounds cheesy, but this is true. Trust is the hallmark of the client-lawyer relationship. So it's important. You're not at cocktail parties explaining, confidential information that belongs to your clients. Comment 18 says a client may require the lawyer to implement special security measures not required by this rule. For example, a lot of you, if you have any banking clients, you'll be very aware of there are strict security things you need to do. So it's basically saying Rule 1.6 sets the ground floor for what you have to do, but it's okay if other clients say you have to have more security than what's already, meets the bar of Rule 1.6. So later, in an attempt to take over the company, Kendall publicly discloses some very unsavory information about Waystar Royco, and he suggests that his father is not fit to run the company. And then this is a rare moment. I think this is the end of season 2 in the finale where you see this. This is about as big of a smile as you're ever going to see from Logan Roy. But in this moment, he is proud of his son. He's like, he just stabbed me in the back, and that's exactly what I would have done. He's getting to be a killer. I love it. And so with this, it's his war, right? And so Logan Roy pulls a Tony Soprano. He didn't whack anybody. No one went missing. But what he did was he wanted to make sure he was going to sue the pants off of Kendall for breaching his fiduciary duties and other things, other duties he owed to the company. And he tasked Shiv to say, Shiv and the team, we're going to contact the 5 best attorneys in the area, get them conflicted out so they cannot represent Kendall in this fight. And so Logan tasked his daughter Shiv with meeting with Lisa, someone she knew from the past, to make sure that she could be conflicted out. And through this conversation, it's made clear, probably later in the conversation than it should have, but Lisa makes clear that she can't talk about this, implying, which is what happened, implying that she already talked to Kendall and Kendall has retained her firm. So Rule 1.18 talks about the duties we owe to prospective clients. Subsection C says a lawyer shall not represent a client with interests materially adverse to those of a prospective client in the same or substantially related matter, if the lawyer received information from the prospective client that could be significantly harmful to that person in the matter. And again, that's why it's so important. Sometimes it's awkward and it doesn't work out great, especially if you're meeting someone in person, but you always want to run a conflicts check before you get substantive information about a potential matter, because you don't want to end up conflicted out. And worse, you don't want to end up in a situation where someone from your firm already represents the opposite side and you have this person confiding in you and giving you this confidential information. That is an awkward situation to get out of. And so next, we've introduced the main characters. We've talked about Kendall's failed takeover. Now let's talk about another issue facing Kendall. And this is not unique to just the uber wealthy. And they aren't safe from everything as well. You'll see they have their vices as well.
Said. What's in the smoothie?
Burgundy.
I'm sorry?
I hyper decant. You don't hyper decant? You're just doing regular decanting?
If by regular decanting, you mean pouring into my open mouth, yeah.
You should hyper decant. It softens the tannins, heightens the aromas. You can age your wine 5 years and 10 seconds. Truly.
So it's not always this comical or just flat out ridiculous, but substances play a large role in this show. Kendall has had some truly serious issues with substance abuse, both during the series, and it's very clear before season 1, episode 1 starts. There's a past that he had there with alcohol and a lot of other heavier substances. And so with this, he's clean for a while early in the series, but then when things go sideways between Kendall and his father, Logan, he kind of falls back into his old habits.
Do me a favor. Can you make sure that Kendall doesn't come back in a box?
Okay.
Yeah, I don't want him showing up dead at the bottom of some French fag's pool.
Oh, no, absolutely. None of us do.
And so with that, it's clear, this is, again, there is concern from Logan there, but it's clear that, at least there's rumors, heard the grapevine that he's back on substance. Again, it's very clear that the public knew about it as well.
2 drinks maximum, not big drinkers.
That's okay. Nobody here has any glaring substance abuse issues that almost brought down the company, right?
Tom?
In addition to substances and the role they play, the stress of Kendall's job as interim CEO and his attempts to take back over the company clearly affected him. And with this,
I need a conversation with you in private.
What is this?
There's a few things you should know. Okay, there's no way to put this nicely, so forgive me for stating it baldly, but there's a huge debt problem.
What do you... No.
Yes,
No, there's not.
$3 billion.
So with that, this conversation continues.
It's difficult to savor this moment, Jerry.
Sorry about that. Don't jump.
With that, there's moments later in the series, this is during the panic room episode, where Kendall walks upstairs. There's no commentary, but you can see things that are going through his mind that everyone wishes weren't. Later in the series, someone obviously saw that he was up there because they install barricades to where people can't get that close to the edge in the subsequent episode. But with that every time I give a CLE, I try to talk about whatever state I'm in. I try to talk about the lawyer's assistance program they have, because as lawyers, we are prime candidates for stress, for mental issues, for substance abuse. For example, there's a 2016 report I read years ago and said lawyers are 3 times more likely to suffer from depression than other professionals, 2 times more likely to die by suicide than other professionals. And then again, I read this, I haven't done any more look at it, but this number is low, but it blows my mind. It said 11% of attorneys contemplate suicide monthly. That is a staggering piece of information. With that, this has been close to people in my life, as this has affected my life indirectly, and it's very important just to get the word out there. So this is set up, tlaphelps.org, and then we have the phone number there as well. If you think you could use help from this organization, if you think others could, please forward on this information. It is for law students, for judges, for lawyers. They address all kinds of things like mental health, substance issues, stress management. And the great thing is it's all confidential, and they provide a large number of free resources. So again, if you think you could use help from this, or someone you know could, I would encourage you to send on that information or use the information. So next, as promised, we are going to talk about the working relationship between Tom Wambsgans and his inferior, his employee, cousin Greg. There's some very bad documents that come up in this cruise scandal. And Tom learns about them, I think maybe the day or the day after he comes in as head of the cruise lines division. And here's the conversation. What are those documents about? Here's what they're about.
It's complicated.
Kind of, yeah, but not really. For a number of years, there was an unofficial company policy on the cruise lines that if there was a serious criminal incident, we would, if possible, sail not home, but to a Caribbean or South American port where there were so-called friendly authorities. And we could minimize the incident to avoid negative PR.
Incidents like
theft, sexual assault, rape, murder.
Okay, the bad ones.
Yeah, there's hundreds in there.
So we have this really, really bad evidence. What do we do with this evidence? What does Tom want to do with it?
These are the file numbers, and this is the room number.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's on Thanksgiving. Who is cousin Greg's boss, instructs him to go in there and destroy it. Then that's what he's told to do.
So, these are the boxes I need.
Okay, pass.
And you presumably you keep that, like that record of who got what when?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Where does that like record go? Like
it goes in this book.
Cool. Great. Who cares, right? Yeah, I was just asking because just in terms of like sharing it with third parties, like I like to keep my data pretty tight.
So we know cousin Greg keeps his data tight. Let's talk about the ethical rules implicated here. First, rule 3.4. And again, I'm a litigator. I cannot stand the flowery name here, fairness to opposing party and counsel. But with that, let's see what that actually means. A lawyer shall not unlawfully, keyword there, unlawfully, obstruct another party's access to evidence or unlawfully alter, destroy, or conceal a document or other material having potential evidentiary value. Again, common sense, but a lawyer shall not conceal or assist another person in doing this as well. Common sense, the spoliation, this is a very serious thing. That's why courts at times can use death penalty sanctions when this kind of bad things happen. Next, rule 5.2, and this is very important when we're talking to a young lawyer group like today. Rule 5.2 talks about the responsibility of a subordinate lawyer. Now, you want to know this because when you have a bar number, like it's your bar card on the line when you're doing things, even if your boss is telling you to do them, all right? So rule 5.2 says a lawyer is bound by the rules of professional conduct, notwithstanding that the lawyer acted at the discretion of another person. And most often it's going to be someone like above you in the chain in your firm, right? Now, there is a carve out. It is permissible for an attorney to do something when it is done in accordance with the supervisory lawyer's reasonable, keyword reasonable, resolution of an arguable question of professional duty. Hopefully you're not having to parse through that and make that determination, right? Hopefully you're staying far enough on the right. Next, rule 5.1 talks about the responsibility of supervising attorneys. A lawyer who has supervising authority over someone else shall take reasonable efforts to ensure that the other lawyer conforms to these rules. And also, a lawyer is responsible for another lawyer's violation of the rules if the lawyer orders or, with knowledge of the specific conduct, ratifies that conduct and that conduct violates other rules. So next, let's talk about confidentiality. You got to do better than Greg in keeping your client's information confidential.
Secret, Greg?
Yeah.
But not top secret. Interesting. Just secret. That's smart. Just so people know, you know, that these are secret.
They're secret, yeah. I don't know, because sometimes the janitors, they come and they throw stuff out. And, look, the actual envelope says receipts.
Ooh, but they're not, in fact, receipts. Greg, you're a criminal mastermind. What polyglot genius could ever hope to crack your impenetrable code?
Shut up.
God. Easy.
Sorry.
Takeaway there, other than not telling your boss to shut up, is rule 1.6 confidentiality. We already covered that rule, but of course, we need to keep our client's data tight, as cousin Greg would say. So next, we've heard this phrase before, but it's not the crime that gets you, it's the cover up. So look, there's an internal investigation about these issues. Let's see what happened in that investigation.
But now, in terms of records and document keeping, well, we need to locate all written information relevant to this investigation and safeguard it from destruction, negligence, malfeasance. Are you aware of any document destruction which might hinder our inquiries?
I think, You know what? I've just realized we're going to be here for a while, and I want to give you my best attention, but I really need to pee.
We'd rather you stayed here.
I've got this pathetically weak bladder. I'm like an old woman who's had a baby somehow, so I'm gonna. But I'm so sorry. I'll be right back. Okay.
So with that, we can see where this is going. Senate not so nicely invited Tom to come give his testimony to one of the committees there. And let's talk about depositions real quick and the importance of truth telling. So when you're preparing a witness to give testimony, to be deposed, to sign a sworn statement, it's important to know whether your client will testify honestly. Like, again, duh, we know this. And if they don't answer truthfully, it could open them up to impeachment, and it's going to harm their credibility in front of the jury or here in front of the Senate committee.
Within the upper echelons of the firm and the family, Lester was commonly known as Mo. Is that correct?
I'm a relative newcomer.
This email, you call Lester McClintock Mo. Why?
I think it was just a nickname.
Mm-hmm. You call him Mo over 30 times in emails to family and colleagues.
And so with that, to be clear, you never want your client to lie. But at depositions, you also don't want your client to volunteer testimony. You want them to answer the question that's asked. They don't need to go further. And so sometimes you have a client, this happens a lot with founders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, and sometimes they think they're the smartest person in the room, and they may try to argue their way out of a case or try to win a case at deposition. Now, when they do that, a lot of times they violate the common rule that a opponent should answer only the question he or she is asked. And here's how that can play out when the person giving testimony decides to go further than the answer requires.
Lester's nickname was Mo. Mo Lester. Molester. That never came up.
Senator, I think, I guess maybe he was a little creepy seeming, perhaps.
Well, you were right there.
But just because he was called molester didn't mean it's just an off-color joke, you know.
That was 100% based on truth. But of all the many, many people who called this molester Mo Lester, not one of them had the slightest idea that he actually was a molester. I mean, you could see how that stretches our credulity.
Yes, Senator, I can see that. I think he just seemed a bit like one, maybe, but we didn't know anything.
Not the most helpful testimony. So if anyone here has seen, there's a deposition excerpt from Justin Bieber, and they ask him questions over and over. He goes, I don't recall. They ask another question, I don't recall. So a lot of people think that can be the magic words that saves them. Sometimes not remembering can be a dangerous game, especially when the questions are straightforward and simple, like this question here.
Interim, they were signed out, and if you look at the ledger packet 15B, by a Gregory Hirsch. Is that someone known to you, Mr. Wamsgans?
No, sorry.
No?
No? No, Tom?
Oh, yes, sorry, yes. Known to me. Yes, in that sense, yes.
In what sense?
In the sense that, what I understood that you meant.
What did you think I meant?
That, I knew of him, but no, I know him and his face.
Not the best save. I love and his face at the end. So here, Rule 3.3 talks about false testimony. If a lawyer knows a client intends to testify falsely, or if the client wants the lawyer to introduce false evidence, step one, try to dissuade the client from that approach. Step two, lawyer should refuse to offer false evidence or evidence that the lawyer knows, reasonably should know to be false. If only a portion of witness's testimony is going to be false, then the lawyer may call the witness, but may not elicit or otherwise permit the witness to give testimony that the lawyer knows is false. Again, I know we can all hide behind, well, I didn't know, this for sure 100%, but use your common sense and, what guides you inside to know where to find that line. Next, we're not going to finish everything today, but I'm going to get you out of here on time. We're going to talk about what happens when a third party is paying for a client's attorney's fees. It happens all the time, especially when insurance gets involved. But here, the company appointed an attorney for cousin Greg because after that amazing testimony Greg had a target on its back next for the DOJ investigation. So the company has pressured Greg into signing a joint defense agreement. And from Greg's perspective, it's not clear whose interest this attorney represents.
Like, I'm a lawyer from Arbuthnot Wise, and I'm just checking in to say hi.
Oh, that's nice. Am I paying for this?
No, my fees are paid by Waystar. Should I come in and explain?
Oh, wait, sorry, from Waystar, so from Logan, or?
No, I'm from Arbuthnot Wise. Great, keep up, man. Hey, no, I'm just checking in to see if the FBI has been in contact and see if you have any questions.
Oh, okay, because you're...
I'm your lawyer.
Okay.
Right? Yeah?
Yeah.
So I'll call Jerry and tell her that we're all squared away. And
So Greg doesn't know what's going on there. There's actually that woman sitting on the couch as a law student. After that attorney leaves, he goes, so is that my lawyer? And she goes, I don't know. Do you want me to call my contracts professor? And he's like, yeah. And so next, his grandpa, who is Logan's brother, who we established earlier, does not like Logan. He arranged for an attorney for cousin Greg. And we'll see there, the attorney's goals may be a little different than cousin Greg's goals.
You're our little wedge, Greg. A nice little wedge to open up the hood and have a poke around in at Waystar.
Okay. Good. I guess I'm quite focused on like my position and me in particular not getting fired or going to jail. If that isn't too selfish.
Eyes on the prize, Greg. Eyes on the prize.
Good. I like it.
Eyes on the prize. I think Santa Claus attorney has a different prize in mind. We talk about rules 1.7 with conflict of interest. Comment 13 talks about these situations and says a lawyer may be paid from a source other than the client if the client is informed of the fact and consents and the arrangement does not compromise the lawyer's duty of loyalty or independent judgment to the client. And with all of these, it makes it clear the client has to have adequate information about the material risks of the representation. And so I'm going to skip a couple of the spoilers here. If you haven't seen season 3 yet, man, a lot of stuff happens at the end, and we'll go through there. This is the shoulder pat heard around the world here. And then I'll encourage you, I don't think we have an exact date yet, but soon season 4 is coming out. A lot of things are going to change. It is going to be a lot more interesting TV that you want to keep up with. I want to say thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it. Again, I'm a litigator, entertainment attorney. I'm at a full service firm. If you need something, let us know. Also, please connect with me on LinkedIn. And with that, if you still need more CLE, tomorrow, I'll be on a panel with Saba Syed and Barrett Robin talking about Astroworld Aftermath and the crazy events that happened at the Astroworld Music Festival last November down in Houston. That will be the DBA Entertainment and Sports Law section. We'll be putting that on tomorrow at noon. It'll be hybrid. With that, I'm glad to answer any questions you have, but it was very important to me. I wanted to make sure we're out of here and you are able to get back to billing at 1 o'clock flat.
All right, doesn't look like we have any questions to answer. So Brent, thank you very much. That was fantastic, a really great presentation. And as most everybody here probably knows, the DAYL CLE committee tries to be fun, entertaining topics. Today was no exception. So remember to claim your CLE credit, and we look forward to seeing you for future CLE presentations. Thank you.
Thank y'all for having me. Have a good one.